Hi, this is Al York.
And Chris Lamonda.
Opioid abuse and addiction is a very serious problem that affects the health as well as the social and economic welfare of communities here in the U.S. and around the world. Most folks here are familiar with the devastating toll that opioids, like heroin and prescription opioids, are having in Vermont. Annual overdose deaths from opioids have nearly doubled in Vermont between 2010 and 2015, rising from 41 to 76 deaths across the state each year. So, when EMS personnel, emergency medical system personnel, encounter a suspected case of opioid overdose, they generally administer the direct opioid antagonist, naloxone. Naloxone is administered via several routes, including intramuscular, so right into the muscle, intravenous, into the vein, subcutaneous, under the skin, interosseous, into the bone, or intranasal routes. A growing body of research suggests that the intranasal route, which is a sort of more recent administration route, is of similar effectiveness to injectable routes. Because intranasal administration has several distinct advantages over injectable routes, which we'll discuss in more detail later, we wanted to compare the efficacy of IV and IO, or intravenous and interosseous routes of naloxone administration, to the intranasal route in suspected opioid overdose cases in Vermont. Our goal in this research was to utilize a new data set with the hopes of influencing Vermont EMS best practices as well as reducing EMS associated costs.
For methods, we used retrospective data collected by the statewide incident reporting network, SIREN, which is used by EMS providers throughout Vermont. The vast majority of EMS services entered data into this, and the data was from April of 2014 through August of 2016. Using this data, we used a logistic regression model to for outcomes, looking at naloxone and comparing that to route of administration dose levels, the crew member licensure level, and was the patient in cardiac arrest.
So I'll talk briefly about the results of our study. Our sample consisted of 1,139 cases of first dose naloxone administration. We only looked at the first dose of naloxone administration for the most part. We did do secondary analysis with second and third and total doses, but for the most part, our primary analysis looked at first dose naloxone administration. Only 1,076 cases had sufficient data for us to analyze. We actually ended up excluding cases with doses that were outside of the normal therapeutic range of zero point 0.1 to 2 milligrams, cases where the provider level was unknown, and cases where the route of administration was not intravenous or interosseous or nasal. Figure 1 shows the inclusion and exclusion criteria in our study. We found that 49.4% of patients administered naloxone via IV or IO improved versus 50.6% of patients who were documented as unchanged or worse. 58.9% of patients administered naloxone via nasal routes improved versus only 41.1% who were either unchanged or worse. We found that route of administration, crew member level, and dosage within the normal therapeutic range did not have any statistically significant effect on a patient's response to naloxone. The results of our binary logistic regression are shown in Table 1. However, we did find that patients who experienced a cardiac arrest were less likely to respond to naloxone. Our odds ratio of 10.786 with a 95% confidence interval of 5.9 to 19.69. Figure 2 shows the disposition, or how each case was handled by EMS providers in cases of cardiac arrest versus cases with no documented cardiac arrest. And you can see that the vast majority were treated and then transported by EMS advanced life support providers.
Our recommendations based on our research is that intranasal administration of naloxone is as effective as interosseous and intravenous. We believe there's an advantage over the intravenous and interosseous route based on that there is zero potential for needle sticks and therefore bloodborne pathogen transmission. There's also the advantage of the speed of access of nasal administration versus having to start an IV or IO. Another recommendation we are making is that when patients are found to be in cardiac arrest, they would be better served by providers focusing on high-performance CPR and proper ventilation and oxygenation versus administration of naloxone. Our last recommendation is that similar research be done to replicate our findings, preferably in a prospective manner in larger systems with both rural and urban settings.